with you on this edition of the India Development Debate. Now, days after the government asked the banks to inject funds to save the ailing Jet Airways. In fact, not the government, the banks did take a decision on their own. But the days after they decided to do so, Vijay Mallya, owner of the now defunct Kingfisher Airlines, has called out the NDA government for its double standards, according to him, in a series of tweets. The fugitive liquor baron reminded that he had invested 4,000 crore rupees to save Kingfisher Airlines. His efforts were not recognized. Instead, he was criticized in every possible way. Mallya has also politically colored his statement and said that the BJP government has time and again criticized the Manmohan Singh administration for trying to bail out Kingfisher, but that's exactly what they did with Naresh Goyal's Jet Airways. Is Mallya justified in pointing out the double standards? Is there indeed double speak here? Have the banks gone out that extra mile to bail out Jet Airways? Did they need to do so? Many questions, and I can't think of a better panel than this to answer some of them. Dheeraj Mathur, leader Aerospace PwC, joins us. Prabal Basu Roy, former corporate director, joins us. Charan Singh, CEO of eGrow Foundation, is here with us, and Maithili Bhusnurmata, consulting editor, is here with us. So thank you very much, each one of you, for talking to us right here. But Prabal Basu Roy, you know, and at the outset, I must make a confession. I am no fan of Vijay Mallya. I don't support the fact that he fled this country, despite being a member of parliament, no less. The reality is he should have been here, he should have faced the law, and he should have paid up his dues. But there are a series of tweets that he has put out. Prabal, is Vijay Mallya justified in pointing out the double speak on part of policymakers and banks, where he alleges that Jet is being actively bailed out while Kingfisher Airlines was left to fail?
Supriya, you know, Vijay Mallya is drawing a comparison, and I think to some extent the comparison could be valid. But there are some fundamental differences. The first fundamental difference is that the NCLT regime was not in vogue at that time, neither was the IBC, right? So today that threat is always there. Second, there has been a change in management. See, the banks are taking a haircut, whether it's the form of equity or otherwise, there is a haircut involved, which is what Vijay Mallya was also asking for. However, the change in management is not something which would have happened in the earlier regime. That is for sure. So to that extent, I think, you know, that this is a welcome move. But you're right. I mean, as long as the banks have taken undue interest in this and they have not taken a similar one in other cases. So there is some element of, I guess, political blessing in this entire thing. But as long as they can find a good buyer in the next few months, I think that will be a, you know, it will be a good case study to see what really happens here.
Okay, you know, you are being a little politically correct there, but I know someone who's not going to be politically correct on the show and is going to call a spade, and that's Maithili. Maithili, you know, it's not just Kingfisher Airlines or Jet. First, the question to you, is Vijay Mallya at all justified? Because, you know, truth be told, he got a very long rope as well. But in this case, is he justified to say that the treatment given to the two airlines was different? And the second question is that it's not just about Kingfisher and Jet at this point in time. It is about steel. It is about power. You know, very many of these companies have gone to the NCLT without any real attempt being made to bail them out by banks. Is there some sort of a special treatment? Have banks gone out of their way? Have they walked that extra mile to bail out Jet Airways?
We'll call a spade a spade. As far as Vijay Mallya comparing Kingfisher with Jet is concerned, I don't think there is really entirely double speak, for the simple reason that Kingfisher also got extraordinary forbearance from the banks. In fact, the Reserve Bank of India even implicitly sanctioned a package for Kingfisher, and the Kingfisher brand, State Bank of India lent money against the Kingfisher brand. The extraordinarily uncanny parallels between the two. Both were full-service airlines in an industry where the low-cost model played havoc with the full-service airlines. Both went for disastrous mergers, both started taking losses, and in both cases, banks did show extraordinary forbearance. The difference really is that Vijay Mallya was seen as a willful defaulter. He fled the country, whereas Naresh Goyal is not as yet seen as a willful defaulter. He is a little earlier in the game as compared to Kingfisher. So with Kingfisher, banks did try. So what we have right now is not a bailout of Jet. Banks have thrown him a rope. They threw a similar rope to Kingfisher. It was not enough. Kingfisher floundered. We still don't know whether Jet may flounder. It well might, because the model itself is a flawed model. As to your second question about power and steel, yes, I do think banks have been extraordinarily naive in bailing out an airline, which to my mind is far less critical. I'm using the word bailout in terms of, not exactly a bailout, but even throwing further money, lending further money to an airline rather than to power sector, to the steel sector, cement sector. These are far more critical. But there the Reserve Bank of India and the banks read out the Riot Act and said we have the IBC in charge and now you have to go to the NCLT if you're not willing to pay. In the case of Jet, they seem to have handled it with kid gloves. I'm a little intrigued and I'm wondering why, because to my mind, an airline is nowhere as remotely important to the ordinary citizens of this country as compared to power, steel, cement. So there, yes, I think there are questions that need to be asked and we must ask them.
Okay, give me a minute because I think you raise an important point. Kid glove is what you call it. And Dheeraj Mathur, given the fact that you obviously have your skin in the game as far as aviation is concerned, is airline a more important business than some of the sectors that Maithili pointed out, power, steel, cement? Because job losses is an excuse that has been given time and again by people to defend what the banks have done, to defend the decision. But that argument doesn't cut ice, because that same argument holds true for other sectors, especially manpower intensive ones like the ones we've pointed out, steel, power, cement, among others. I mean, why should airline be a sole exception then?
Before I answer your specific question, let me make a general observation. You see, one has to distinguish between a genuine business problem and fraud. Fraud, there's no question of any kind of sympathy or any kind of special treatment. But we must understand that businesses do flounder for various reasons, and it's important to have a sensible, matured regulatory ecosystem to deal with business failures. The IBC, the NCLT, etc., these are wonderful moves in this direction. That the government has recognized that not every business failure is a fraud, and that there are situations where seeking bankruptcy protection is inevitable. And the matured and developed economies have similar provisions. So this is nothing new or extraordinary. I mean, in the 2009 meltdown, financial meltdown, you had the United States government extending loans. The government extended loans to some of the major financial institutions. So the point is, and those institutions recovered. They paid back their money, and the whole system is doing well. So and of course there is the fact that there are jobs involved, that there's the common man involved, and so whether it's the steel sector or the power sector or the aviation sector, we need to be able to distinguish between genuine business problems and fraud, and help businesses recover from genuine when they face genuine problems. And of course, you punish those who commit fraud. There's no question about that. So that, I think, it's important to understand that, and to sort of to put all of these to put this whole conversation in some sort of perspective. Now, coming to whether the airline sector is more important or the power sector is more important, I don't think that's a fair question to ask. But since you do ask it, what I would say is that in each case of financial distress, the lenders and the borrowers and the shareholders and stakeholders, they do have conversations, and they take decisions based upon what's on the table, what the reality is, and what kind of consensus can be reached. So therefore, it's hard to say that the civil aviation sector is being protected. But there is just one last point as far as the civil aviation sector is concerned. It's no longer just a privilege of the elite and the wealthy.
It is not, but I think it's a far more vocal sector, and which is why they have been treated with kid gloves. I agree with Maithili, unlike some other sectors where perhaps the manpower is not as vocal and not as privileged. But I take your point well, and I'm going to go across to Mr. Charan Singh. And Mr. Charan Singh, banks did not take much time to convert debt into equity as far as this particular action is concerned. This used to be a very rampant exercise, restructuring debt, rejigging debt before the IBC came in, and then was largely discontinued. Why is it suddenly legitimate for banks to do so now?
So, first of all, I must mention this kid's glove thing. Please remember that the entrepreneur who has run the Jet Airlines for more than 2.5 decades has been told to go. That's not an easy thing to do. And when you say the comparison between Kingfisher and Jet, means I'm not very sure if Kingfisher was willing to divorce between the entrepreneur and the company. And that's a pretty harsh decision. The second thing is one has to keep in mind that when you're talking about an economy, be it cement, be it steel, but when you're talking about an economy, jobs are very important. And Kingfisher had a much smaller share in the airline business than Jet has. Of course, its share has been shrinking, but with 119 planes, just imagine the impact and about 15 to 16% of share in the market. Just imagine the impact if this is allowed to sink. On the other hand, the government is planning to set up other 100 more airports, and they had the scheme from Hawaii Chappal to Hawaii Jahaz, where they're saying that they're going to bring this airline and flying experience to everybody. How do you expect them to just let it sink? The most important thing is, if the banks have to lose out money, it means huge amount of money that the haircuts will involve. So it is in the interest of the banks that if they can save an institution, the jobs and the complete mechanism, it is much better for them too. So therefore, converting this whole debt into equity and getting a say into the management, and now asking for about 60 days to 75 days to bring it to the new management, I think has been very, very important. The last point that I want to mention is the times have changed dramatically. The banks have become far more important and their teeth are far more sharper now. They have experimented this, and this experiment which has happened with Jet is going to go a long way in the case of recoveries. The message it gives to the industry now, be it a large industry, be it anybody, the message is very clear and loud. There's no escape. And if the banks want it, they can still do it, and they have done it. They have demonstrated that they can do it. I think that's a very important message. I don't look at it from a kid's glove. I think they have just established a fact that just be sure you just can't get away with this. Both IBC and CLT, the February 12 circular, everything has played a role.
I'll have to come in there.
A long way.
Right, I'll have to come in there, and I think it's important to point out here that we've got two ends of, on the spectrum as far as the arguments are concerned. There is one argument which believes that banks have gone that extra mile, they have treated Jet with kid gloves, and the other argument that stands for the fact that no, they haven't done that. And I don't take away from the fact that yes, I think the pat on the back of banks is that they didn't manage to push out the promoter from the board, and I think that was an exercise well done. But that's what debates are all about. We're getting all sorts of views on this. But Prabal Basu Roy, quickly coming back to you, is it also a function of who has more clout with the banks? And do you believe Naresh Goyal, with the kind of clout that he has, he could make banks oblige and extend that lifeline? Of course, he had to give up his position. Or do you believe the fact that he had to give up his position, the fact that, he was basically shunted out from the board along with his wife, it doesn't cut ice with the argument of clout here?
No, see, Supriya, it's a slightly complex case in that term. But it is very clear, and it has been clear for decades, I mean, whether we choose to accept it or not, that Naresh Goyal has very deep political connections. And the fact that that has helped in this is apparent. What will be more apparent, actually, this whole kid glove thing, etc., what will be more apparent is, in case a government agency, quasi-government agency, actually comes in as a shareholder now, as an equity shareholder. And I'm pointing to NIIF in this particular case, whose name has been doing the rounds. Now, if NIIF makes an investment into this in the next 45, 60 days, then I think, all hell will break loose in terms of this connection, because that will not be on. What has happened at this moment is the banks have taken a risk and basically, as I said, pushing the can down the road by converting debt into equity. Something they have not done before with power and steel, as you rightly mentioned. But they have taken, and that's a legitimate risk which they have taken. Let us see how it works out. It will only work out if they have a good buyer in the wings. And the names of Delta are going around, Tatas are going around, Qatar is going around. So, yeah, carry on. Yes, if that works, it's fine.
Yes.
But political connections are there. There's no question.
Prabal, give me a minute, and my only request to my only request to my panel is, I've got barely 8 minutes on the show. Please keep your answers brief, because there are very important questions that I still need to ask. Dheeraj Mathur, you understand aviation. Very briefly tell me, are there buyers there? The SBI chairman in an interview to us and to everybody else has said that he'll be able to find a buyer by May. Is that possible? Is there appetite in the market for an asset like Jet? Is an airline going to be available to buy it?
Well, definitely. Look, everyone has said this, knows, understands. Jet is a great asset. It's a very valuable asset. Parking slots, flying rights, etc., etc. It's a great brand, and so there. I do believe, and there was interest. I think the reason the earlier attempts failed was because they couldn't get Mr. Goyal off the board and out of the management seat. So now that that has been accomplished, I do believe that there should be greater interest now than there was earlier. And anyone who wants to expand in India, anybody who wants to grow, this is a great opportunity, because for the reasons that I mentioned, they have such a well laid out network. They've got the market, share, they've got the airlines, the airplanes, they've got the staff.
I get that point. I will have to cut you short there. Maithili, I will come to you. Okay, give me a minute. I'll have to go to Maithili. Yeah, there is something important that Prabal Basu Roy said, which is about NIIF. And yeah, Maithili, give me a minute. I have a very pointed question to you as well, besides the points that you want to make. And one of the pointed questions is, no fan of Vijay Mallya, but the fact that he points out that he had written to the previous Prime Minister, he had written to this Prime Minister. There is also a very active involvement of the government. I mean, the government at every stage, the finance ministry at every stage was very aware of what was happening with Jet on the part of lenders and everything. This same thing was called crony capitalism earlier. The fact that NIIF was being asked to put money, is that not crony capitalism? Is that not double speak here?
Oh, absolutely. I would think so. In fact, there is absolutely no reason why NIIF money should be used to give any kind of rope to Jet Airways. Let us not forget that NIIF money consists of the money that is contributed by the taxpayers of this country. And we have to be very particular that it is used to the best possible purpose. Giving a rope to Jet is not the best purpose in this country. Build schools, build hospitals, build roads. That's the kind of thing you need to do. And I have 3 very quick points, Supriya, if I have the time to respond. See, Prabal spoke about that how the scheme that the banks are doing. Let me just add that the RBI's February 12th, the much maligned February 12th circular, specifically withdrew all restructuring programs, including conversion of debt into equity. Despite that, the banks led by State Bank of India have gone in for precisely that. I would like to know why. On Vijay Mathur's question that, we need to discriminate between where an account goes bad because of fraud and others, I'd like to ask, in the case of power sectors, did we show that kind of discrimination? No. All defaulters were taken to the cleaners. As far as Mr. Charan Singh was concerned, he says that asking the entrepreneur to step down, the founder to step down from the board is punishment enough. I'm sorry, asking to step down from the board is not punishment enough. Naresh Goyal still maintains a stake. And as we know in India, you have so many proxy companies and their various ways of influencing the board. So why is Naresh Goyal still there? Let him bring in some money. As we saw with Idea Vodafone, if the promoters are interested, let them put some money on the table. We see no sign of that from Naresh Goyal. So I'm afraid I have questions for all your panelists, and my answer to any kind of rope from bank money is a big, big no.
Okay, I think that's an important point, that it's, promoters are supposed to show faith. Why can't Naresh Goyal not put in money when Vodafone Idea are doing a rights issue and they are doing something similar? But Charan Singh, the question to you has to be that why should lenders worry about the fact that Etihad wants to reduce or pare its stake? Etihad should be able to find a buyer. Why should the banks facilitate that at all? And that raises the big question that, why are the banks going out of their way, even though you disagree with the kid glove?
Well, it's very, very clear. To me, they have opened the market, and they've opened it to anybody. It could be, if Goyal wants to come back with the money, is welcome. If Etihad wants to come back, anybody. Could be Singapore Airlines. To my mind, why not Indigo? And they can expand their share. So the market is totally open, and I think in a country like India, the vast country that it is, and so many more airports are going to come up, 8 to 10 airlines operating in India is the most competitive thing to do. The other thing which I want to mention is, it's not that, and it's so visible, it was so apparent that Goyal was trying his level best for the last few years and certainly for the last few months to raise resources. That was not visible, so apparently visible when Kingfisher was, if you are trying to find the comparison with the Kingfisher. Also the use of resources. The banks almost knew where the money is coming from, where it is getting used to in case of Goyal. That probably wasn't true in the case of Kingfisher if you read the reports. So therefore, there is a big difference between the two, and comparing it one to one probably is not the right thing. Bankers most importantly are covering their own losses. And why should they expose when they see there is an opportunity, they see there is competition, they see there are buyers, they are just covering their losses. Otherwise, the loss that the banks would have to take if they let go this institution is massive. So I think the banks are working in the best interest of the country and their own interest.
Okay. You know what? I've got completely no time left on this show. Thank you very, very much, all of you, for joining us on this edition of the India Development Debate. Mr. Charan Singh, Dheeraj Mathur, Prabal Vasu Roy, and of course, Maithili Busrumat. If I could, I would have borrowed more time from the next show, but I can't, and so I won't. It's a fascinating discussion, what the banks have done. Like the panel says, they've taken a risk, but I like a panel that's so divided on this. There is an end of the panel that believes that banks have given an extra rope to Naresh Goyal. He should have been asked to show more faith, bring in more money, and not be treated with the kid gloves that he has been treated. No amount of NIF money should be put in to revive Jet. That is not what NIF needs to bail out airlines for. The other end of the spectrum and the other end of the opinion is that this is pretty much what banks should be doing, saving an airline, saving jobs, but then that argument doesn't hold true for steel, power, cement companies, many of which have landed in IBC. On that note, completely out of time on this edition of the India Development Debate, we'll take a quick breather. There's so much more that's coming up right here on ET Now. You can't afford to miss any of that.